Let me tell you right now, grab your drink of choice, maybe a stress ball, and get comfortable. Because the story I'm about to tell you involves the kind of audacity that honestly should be illegal. We are talking about 22 years of marriage, a midlife crisis that went off the rails, and a Christmas dinner that ended with me destroying my entire family dynamic in less than 10 seconds. If you think you know where this is going, honey, you don't. I'm Marcus, I'm 46, and until last December, I thought I was living the suburban dream. I was the guy who barbecued on weekends, paid the mortgage early, and funded my daughter's college tuition without blinking. But apparently, while I was playing Provider of the Year, my wife, Diane, was playing a very different game. It all started, or ended, really, at Christmas dinner. I was hosting. I had spent 3 days prepping. I'm talking a prime rib that cost more than my first car. 3 different types of potatoes because my daughters are picky, the works. We had 20 people in my dining room. Diane's parents, my sister, cousins, the neighbors. It was that classic holiday chaos. Diane stood up to make a toast. Now, Diane had been different lately. We'll get into that tea in a minute. But she stands up, tapping her champagne flute with a manicured nail, looking like she's about to announce she's running for Senate. She smiles, scans the room, locks eyes with me, and says, loud enough for the neighbors down the street to hear, my resolution for next year is to stop settling. Honestly, my biggest mistake in life was marrying a boring man who holds me back. The room didn't just go quiet, it went vacuum-sealed silent. You could hear the ice melting in the glasses. I sat there frozen with a piece of prime rib halfway to my mouth. I waited for the just kidding or the I love you really, but it didn't come. Instead, my oldest daughter, Jessica, she's 20, snorted, a full-on ugly snort of laughter. She covered her mouth, looked at her mother, and they shared this look, this smirk, like I was the punchline to an inside joke they'd been telling for months. My mother-in-law looked at her plate. My sister looked like she was about to launch a dinner roll at Diane's head. But my youngest, Sophie, who's 16, just looked terrified. She looked at me, then at her mom, and her eyes welled up. That was the moment. That was the snap. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. I stood up slowly. I wiped my mouth with my linen napkin, placed it gently on the table, and I looked Diane dead in the eye. I smiled, a cold, dead smile, and I said, well, congratulations, Diane. You're single now. Then I walked out, left the roast, left the guests, left the house I'd paid for. If you are already shook by the disrespect, hit that like button right now. Because, honey, I haven't even told you about the boyfriend yet. I drove to a motel 6 miles away, sat on a lumpy mattress staring at a water stain on the ceiling, listening to my phone blow up. Diane called 12 times. Jessica texted me calling me a drama queen and saying I ruined Christmas, but I didn't answer. I just lay there and replayed the last year of my life, and suddenly all the red flags I'd ignored started looking like a communist parade. Let's rewind because you need the context. About 8 months prior, Diane turned 44, and she didn't just have a midlife crisis, she had a midlife catastrophe. She started talking about finding her authentic self. At first, it was harmless. She started listening to these empowerment podcasts. Then she joined a high-end gym. Not the Planet Fitness down the street, but one of those places that charges $300 a month and smells like eucalyptus and judgment. She was there all the time. I'm training, she'd say. I'm working on my glutes. She started dressing differently. The cardigans were gone. In came the neon spandex and crop tops. And listen, if you want to wear a crop top at 44, you do you, boo. But she started treating me like I was furniture. Old, dusty furniture that didn't match her new aesthetic. I'd ask her how her day was, and she'd sigh, you wouldn't understand, Marcus. You don't have passion. Passion? I'm an architect. I design bridges. I have plenty of passion, I just don't post about it on Instagram with 15 hashtags. Then there was Jessica, my 20-year-old daughter, who I was putting through a very expensive private university, suddenly became Diane's best friend. They were inseparable. Whispering in corners, giggling when I walked into the room. Jessica started treating me with this weird disdain, rolling her eyes whenever I spoke, telling me I was out of touch. Sophie, my 16-year-old, was the opposite. She got quiet. She started spending all her time in her room. I thought it was just teenage angst. I was so wrong. Back to the motel. It's 2 a.m. on Christmas night. There's a knock at the door. I look through the peephole and it's Dave. Dave is my best friend since college. He's a divorce attorney. I hadn't even called him yet, but apparently my sister had. He walks in with a bottle of bourbon and a notepad. He pours 2 drinks in the plastic motel cups and says, "Drink, then talk, then we destroy her." I stayed at Dave's place for the next 3 days. I refused to go home. And that Sunday, Sophie showed up. She took an Uber to Dave's house because she didn't have her license yet. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. She sat on Dave's couch shaking and she dropped the bomb. "Dad," she whispered, "Mom isn't just going to the gym. She's seeing someone. His name is Jackson, with an X. Jackson." Of course his name was Jackson. Sophie spilled everything. She'd seen the texts. She'd heard the phone calls. Jackson was her personal trainer. He was 26 years old. He drove a leased BMW and had a TikTok following where he posted videos of himself flexing in mirrors. But the knife in the heart, Jessica knew. "Jessica has been covering for them," Sophie said, crying. "When Mom says she's shopping with Jessica, she's actually with Jackson. Jessica thinks it's cool. She says Mom deserves a hot boy summer." My 20-year-old daughter, whose rent and tuition I was paying, was facilitating her mother's affair with a guy barely older than her. They were laughing about it. That's what the look at Christmas was. They were laughing because they thought I was a fool. I felt like I was going to throw up. But Dave didn't blink. He just clicked his pen and said, "Okay, now we go to war. Do we have access to the finances? We are in an at-fault state for divorce. That means if I can prove adultery, it affects the alimony, it affects the asset split." I went back to the house on a Tuesday morning when I knew Diane was at Pilates, Jackson's apartment, and Jessica was back at her dorm. I raided the home office. I pulled every bank statement, every credit card bill, every receipt for the last 2 years. What I found was staggering. You know how people say follow the money? Honey, the money trail was a 4-lane highway leading directly to Jackson's pockets. Diane had spent $18,000 in 6 months. There were withdrawals for training sessions, cash. But then there were the credit card hits, Lululemon charges that were astronomical. But I dug deeper. I found charges for men's apparel stores, a $600 watch, a consultation fee for a nutritionist that, when I Googled the LLC, was registered to Jackson's home address. She was paying his rent. She was buying his protein powder. She was funding his lifestyle so he could look successful on the internet. And the hotels, oh, the hotels. Girls' weekends that aligned perfectly with charges at the W Hotel downtown. I took photos of everything. I downloaded the PDFs. I built a spreadsheet. I was meticulous. I matched the dates of her gym sessions with the credit card charges. Then I did something petty. I logged into our family phone plan. I pulled the text logs, thousands of texts between Diane and a number listed as Trainer J. I handed it all to Dave. He looked at the file, looked at me, and said, "This is a slam dunk. We're going to catch her flat-footed." We filed the papers on January 4th. I had a process server hand them to her while she was having coffee with Jessica. I wanted Jessica to see it. Diane called me screaming, "You're filing for divorce because I called you boring? You are so fragile. This is exactly what I mean." She still thought this was about the toast. She had no idea. I answered the phone calmly. "Read page 14, Diane, the section labeled Grounds for Divorce, Adultery." Dead silence. "And Diane," I added, "I hope Jackson likes the watch. I kept the receipt." She hung up. The next 6 weeks were a masterclass in delusion. Diane hired a lawyer who immediately promised her the moon. She wanted the house. She wanted 60% of my retirement. She wanted $3,000 a month in alimony because she had become accustomed to a certain lifestyle. Dave and I just sat back and waited for the discovery phase. See, Diane didn't know I had the full financial picture yet. She thought I just knew about the affair. She didn't know I had the receipts. When her lawyer sent over her financial affidavit, she lied. She omitted the cash withdrawals. She claimed the credit card debt was household expenses. That's when we dropped the nuke. We sent over a binder, a literal 3-inch binder, tabbed, color-coded, tab A, the hotel receipts cross-referenced with her girls' trips where her friends weren't even in town. Tab B, the Venmo history. She had been Venmoing Jackson for supplements. Tab C, the text messages, including one where she told Jackson, "Don't worry, babe. The old man doesn't suspect a thing. I'll get the money for your car lease." Her lawyer called Dave the next day. His tone had changed completely. He sounded exhausted. He basically said, "Okay, she's willing to settle. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel right now because the way I handled my daughter is about to make some of you cheer and some of you cry." While the legal battle was winding down, I had to deal with Jessica. Since the day I left, Jessica had been blasting me on social media, subtweets about toxic fathers and narcissists. She blocked my number. She refused to speak to me unless she needed money, and she did need money. Tuition for the spring semester was due. I sat down with Dave and asked, "Am I legally obligated to pay for her college?" Dave checked the decree. "Nope, she's over 18. Unless there was a prior written agreement, it's voluntary." I logged into the university parent portal. I saw the bill, $12,500 for the semester. I clicked cancel payment plan. Then I called the credit card company. I had given Jessica a card for emergencies, books, gas, food. I pulled the statement, Sephora, Nordstrom, a $200 bar tab. I reported the card lost and had the account closed. 2 days later, my phone rings. It's Jessica. "Dad, my card got declined at Starbucks, and the bursar's office sent me an email saying my registration is on hold. Fix it." No, hello. No, how are you? Just demands. I took a deep breath. "Hello, Jessica. The card is canceled because it was for emergencies and macchiatos aren't emergencies, and the tuition, I'm not paying it." "What?" she screamed. "You have to. You're the dad. That's your job." "My job," I said, my voice shaking a little because it hurt, "was to raise a daughter with integrity. I failed at that. You conspired with your mother to destroy our family. You mocked me to my face. You laughed while she humiliated me. You chose your side, Jessica. You chose the cool mom and the hot boy summer. So ask cool mom to pay your tuition." "She doesn't have any money," Jessica shrieked. "I know," I said. "Maybe ask Jackson." I hung up. The divorce was finalized in March. Here's the scoreboard. I kept the house. I kept my pension. I kept 100% of the savings that predated the marriage. Thank you, prenup, from 22 years ago that she forgot about. Diane got half of the joint checking account, which was drained because she'd spent it all on Jackson and her car. No alimony. Zero. In our state, if you can prove the affair caused the breakdown of the marriage and you spent marital funds on the affair, the judge looks very unkindly on alimony requests. Because I had the receipts proving she spent $18K on him, the judge deducted that amount from her share of the equity buyout. Basically, she had to pay me back for her boyfriend out of her own pocket, but I wasn't done. I needed closure. I found out where Jackson was working, a new gym across town. I drove over there one evening. I waited by his car. He came out, gym bag over his shoulder, looking like a generic brand superhero. He saw me and froze. "Hey," he said, looking nervous. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble." I laughed. "No trouble, Jackson. I just wanted to say thank you." He looked confused. "What?" "Thank you," I said, leaning against my truck. "If you hadn't come along and made Diane so reckless, I might have stayed in that miserable marriage for another 10 years. You did me a favor. You saved me." He relaxed a little. "Oh, you're welcome. One more thing," I said, smiling. "She's broke. The divorce is final. She got nothing, no alimony, no house, and she's $18,000 in debt to her lawyer. So she's all yours, buddy. Hope you can support her on a trainer's salary. Good luck with the lease on that BMW." I watched the color drain from his face. He wasn't in it for love, folks. He was in it for the sugar mama. And the sugar had just run out. Here's the update. 2 weeks later, the fallout was spectacular. Jackson broke up with Diane 3 days after our parking lot chat. Apparently, he needed to focus on his career and couldn't handle the drama. Translation, the ATM was out of order. Diane moved into a studio apartment on the bad side of town. It's all she could afford with her credit score tanking. She called me crying one night, drunk. "How could you do this to me? I gave you the best years of my life." "And you spent the last year giving my money to a child," I replied. "Don't call this number again. Sophie is living with me full time. She's doing great. We have movie nights. We cook dinner, actual dinner, not kale smoothies. She's in therapy and she's healing. She's a good kid." Update 2, 6 months later, current day. Jessica dropped out of college. She couldn't get a loan without a co-signer, and Diane certainly couldn't co-sign. She's currently working at a retail store in the mall and living on Diane's pull-out couch in that tiny studio apartment. From what Sophie tells me, it is a war zone over there. Diane and Jessica scream at each other constantly. Diane blames Jessica for not stopping her. Jessica blames Diane for being messy. They are miserable together. It's like a reality show where everyone loses. Jessica sent me a letter last week. No email, a handwritten letter. It said, "Dad, I'm sorry. I was stupid. I thought it was funny, but it wasn't. I miss you. Can we get coffee? I haven't answered yet. I'm looking at the letter right now. Part of me, the dad part, wants to fix it, wants to drive over there, pick her up, and tell her it's okay. But the other part of me remembers the laughter at the Christmas table. I remember her calling me a narcissist because I wouldn't pay for her to party while I sat in a motel room. I think I'm going to wait. Actions have consequences, and she needs to sit in hers a little longer. As for me, I met someone. Her name is Elena. She's 42. She's a librarian. She hates the gym, loves Italian food, and thinks my job is fascinating. We're going to Paris next month. I've never been to Paris. Diane always wanted to go, but she wanted to go for Fashion Week. Elena just wants to eat croissants and look at art. I'm finally living my life, not funding someone else's fantasy. So here's my question for you guys in the comments. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay Jessica's tuition even after she apologized? Or does she need to learn the hard way that loyalty goes both ways? Let me know what you think. And seriously, if you enjoyed watching the trash take itself out, smash that subscribe button. We are almost at 100K, and I have more stories from the dating world that will blow your mind.